Good afternoon. My name is Brandon Wade, and I have the pleasure of delivering to you Christopher Small and the Art of Musicking. Christopher Small was born in Palmerston North, New Zealand in 1927. He died in Sitges, Spain in 2011. He taught in many different schools, mainly though in England. He was an author. He wrote several different books attributed to many different journals. Some of the books that he wrote were Music, Society, and Education, Schoenberg, Music of the Common Tongue, Survival and Celebration in African American Music, and Musicking, the Meanings of Performing and Listening. He spoke at many educational institutions, and he even wrote a three-episode series for BBC in 1986 about Afro-American music. Small's education, he attended University of Otago and then Victoria University College and studied composition in London. So when we talk about Small's philosophy or view on education, he was very poignant about what he believed in. And if you read any of his books, you would understand it. Small's views on education can plainly be seen in his book, Music, Society, and Education. To him, schooling and education are not synonymous. One does not need to go to school to get educated, and one can go to school and not learn anything at all. He also says the idea of knowledge as an independent entity, believing that it exists outside the knower, and regardless of whether anyone knows it or not, that view pervades our entire system of schooling from beginning to end. And when he talks about the system of schooling, he is referring to this Western culture of schooling, how students go from one grade to one grade, from one thing to the next thing. He says that the experiential factor is ignored or choosing the method for students to assimilate knowledge. And children are promised future satisfaction for their sacrifice of present pleasure. He says that we have children who sit through school from one grade to the other completely dissatisfied with the education. So I kind of see that they are taught to sacrifice happiness now so that they can be happy later. But when they finally do graduate, and the education system would say, see, now you can be happy and productive. The children are so beat down and unhappy that they find no joy in the world or care to be productive. And to him, that is the true travesty of our education system and what we do to children. Schools should afford the opportunity of creation as well as assimilation. This was a huge thing. He's saying that students are going to experience and need the opportunity to create regardless of how the information is presented to them. Speaking of presenting information to him, to Christopher Small, he noticed that the way that the classroom is set up is kind of like a concert hall. The desks face the teacher and set the teacher as the only one with knowledge and ability to teach. It only encourages teacher-pupil communication and never pupil-to-pupil education. And so this is kind of in a direct correlation of how he views the concert hall in Western society and the music or the education classroom. You're starting to see kind of that trend break away with more peer-to-peer learning, but this is still something that you can find in any school across the United States. So, where did this all go wrong? He felt that the creation of the syllabus is to standardize learning, hence hindering and capping what can be learned. He says the syllabus forces us to learn in a linear fashion. When humans are left to learn on their own fashion, we work in a spider web form where we'll pick from many different areas and assimilate them into our knowledge base. In our current system, we kind of assume that that some absolute standard of merit is the only way that we can say, look, you have completed all these tasks and learned all these things and gone through all these grades. Now you are smart. And that is a true fallacy to Christopher Small. He also says that teachers are not supposed to be real people. It is viewed as a sign of weakness. We are to be set. So, and to him, as I read this and understood this, we are to be set apart from the rest of the population, either to be viewed maybe as a scarlet letter if you're not liked, or a revered figurehead if you are liked by your students and community. one of the things that he really has a huge issue with is that we as educators assume that the child's mind is a thing of passive material. So passive material meaning that we could grow or mold or shape or instill the future of a child. This kind of says that the child has no idea of what's being done to them. And basically the child's just supposed to sit passively and trustingly to that which that is being done to them or taught to them in their self-interest and the interest of our society. And then one of the last things is a basic flaw in abstract knowledge, that knowledge is divorced from experience. I kind of touched about this a little bit. Children are going to learn and experience regardless of what we do. So what we have done so far to Christopher Small is we have created children who have a lot of knowledge about the world, but have experienced none of it. And to him, that is a true crime to our people. So, what would be Small's philosophy of music? Okay? And I guess the first question we would have to ask ourselves is, what is the function of music in human life? Well, it persists in all humans. Music is not a thing at all, but an activity, something that we as people do. Music is a figment, an abstraction of the action whose reality vanishes as soon as we examine it at all closely. So if it kind of fleets away and as soon as we start to examine it, then what is music? Well, Western music scholars equated the word music with works of music or literature, songs, pieces. And that question makes it a much more manageable. But then when you start to just look at music as, well, it's only works, and if you look at it as the only music and the only music works is that of classical, because that's what the Western scholars would have us believe is the only true music, then the issue is that classical music, which some would have us believe is only the true music, it only counts for about 3% of record sales. And so that means the ivory tower is saying that the only true music is classical or these older pieces, these tried and trues, maybe as we call them. But the rest of the world says, nah, that's not our music. So, then what is music? Maybe music is the performance. I love that Christopher Small would say, however trivial and banal the music literature may be, that is the meaning and the beauty are created whenever any performer approaches it with love and with skill and care that he or she can bring to it. So when I think about that, man, I would think that to Christopher Small, a little girl singing Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer the night before Christmas has the same impact and same quality level as a full oratorio of Handel's Messiah. And so to some people, they would say there's no contest. You know, the orchestration and the orchestras and the full choir and the full presence of the Messiah far outweighs that of a little girl singing maybe off-key Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer in her living room in front of her parents. But to those parents, that is the most precious music and performance they've probably ever heard in their life. So performance does not exist in order to present musical works, but rather musical works exist in order to give performers something to perform. I would say the fundamental nature and meaning of music lie not in the objects, not in the works or the literature or the songs, but in the action and in what people do. And this kind of takes us into musicking. Life is not so much about music, but about people musicking. And so that was kind of Christopher Small's buzzword, his creation, musicking, to perform or to make music. To music is to take part in any capacity in a musical performance, whether by performing or listening, rehearsing or practicing, composing or dancing even. To Christopher Small, it could even include ancillary people like the ticket taker or the custodian, or even the people sitting next to you in the performance hall. Maybe that gentleman unwrapping that individual wrapped candy. That would have an experience on the performance that's being done, and this change maybe your perception of what is happening. So then we should ask the question, what is the theory of musicking? Well, it's not just how, but why taking part in a musical performance acts in such a complex way on our existence as individual, social, and political beings. Musicking for Christopher Small is too large for the mind to truly comprehend, but it provides us with the language by means of which we can come to understand and articulate those relationships, and through them to understand the relationships of our lives. So, we've kind of seen his view of music and musicking. So how does this play a part in Small's music education? Well, we're going to go back to what he feels about the Western approach to music education, maybe look at it from things that he doesn't like. Western approach to music education is product dominant. We care primarily about the outcome of a performance. And this is seen in our classrooms. Did our students perform all the notes and rhythms correctly? In measure 42, did we crescendo just the right amount? Or did we fail in that and thus fail the piece? Maybe are we teaching the classical and only true music as stated by our colleagues in the ivory tower? Or do the parents and administration and people in the community find what our students do acceptable? How about in music contests? Man, in music contests, it seems that we kill any sense of musicality in hopes to meet the technical demands of the piece of literature. And so these are some of the issues that he has with music education in the Western society. He likened music ed to a factory. In music education, we focus on scales, arpeggios, and vocal exercises. We've done this, and we've created students who can sing maybe even greater than their predecessors in the 14, 15, 1600s. But in doing this, as teachers, we tend to teach just to the top percent who can meet the needs required by universities to continue in their so-called world of music. He also stated that music educators are tried and failed musicians who believe that the way they were taught is the way they should be taught. And I've seen this in my own conversations with people as I've begun to study different voice models that are maybe contrary to what we were taught in school, which is primarily the bel canto style. People are adverse to change, and we tend to stick with one thing. So, he says music, how should it be fixed? He says music should be natural and focused on the learning during the process, not focused on the end result. And so if you look at this, jazz music was originally devoid of form and rules, and came about naturally. It flew in the face of classical musicians, and now it is finally accepted by the ivory tower. But what is the new backward stepchild? And I would have to say pop music. I have conversation with fellow colleagues that say pop music shouldn't be taught in the music classroom, that there's nothing that can be learned from it. But I would argue that this is a great way for the students to experience music in something that they already deal with. And then it's our job to tie that into everything else. When a beginning musician starts music, it's not to dominate it and be the best at it, but it's to learn fully how to experience the world and explore their innate emotions. A child who draws and learns how to speak is not about the product finish. They're all about the experience. And once that experience is done, they usually discard the picture or move on to something else. It's not about the product. And as to Small, music education should be about the experience and not the product. It's been an absolute joy to getting to read and understand Christopher Small. I would say at the beginning of it, I truly didn't agree with what he had to say, but as I studied more and began to see things from his point of view, I know that there are many things in my philosophy of education that I'm going to take from him and do even better as an educator for my students. I appreciate your time. If you're interested, here's some citations or some of the readings that I've done of Christopher Small. I hope you have a great day, and thank you very much.